Berean 2025, Study 1.3, Play His Name, the Hebrew Music Scale. Shalom, this is the third in a series of studies on the subject of our Creator's name. This study will describe a music scale where each letter of the Hebrew Aleph-bet is assigned a wavelength of sound, and these wavelengths are determined by the numerical values of the Hebrew letters. The study will also describe the musical instrument I have created to play this music scale, and thus to be able to play our Creator's name. This music scale may have been used in ancient Yisra'ěl. 1. Play His name. There are at least 185 songs in Scripture. 150 of these songs are in the Tehillim. The first song in Scripture is sung by Moshe after the children of Yisra'ěl crossed the Red Sea. The last song in Scripture is sung by those who have overcome the beast. In the Tanakh, words relating to the vocal aspects of music, that is, singing, are derived from the root word shin resh. The etymology of this Hebrew root is from the idea of rope making, where cords of fiber or animal sinews are twisted together, first in one direction and then in the other direction, causing the fibers to lock or press together, giving the rope strength. In the Tanakh, the instrumental aspects of music, that is, playing, are derived from the root word zayin mem resh. The etymology of this Hebrew root is from the physical act of removing grapes from the vine, that is, to prune with an implement referred to in Scripture as a pruning hook. In a musical sense, this can be directly related to the technique used to pluck a string on an instrument like a harp. With the basic idea of plucking a string, the application of the root is expanded to mean melody and to melody. In the Tanakh, words related to music in general are derived from the root word nun gimel nun. The etymology of this Hebrew root has to do with the bright sound of music. So to sing, root word shin resh. To play, root word zayin mem resh. And music, root word nun gimel nun. Bible translators are frequently incorrect regarding these distinctions. I give thanks to Yahuwah according to his righteousness, and play the name of Yahuwah Most High. I rejoice and exult in you. I will play to your name, O Most High. Therefore I give thanks to you among the nations, Yahuwah, and to your name I play. So I will play your name forever. When I pay my vows day by day, all the earth bow to you, and they will play to you, and they will play your name, Selah. Sing to Elohim, play his name, raise up a highway for him who rides through the deserts. By his name, Yah, and exalt before him. It is good to give thanks to Yahuwah and to play to your name, O Most High. Sing to him, play to him, speak, pray, meditate of all his wonders. I will sing a new song to you, Elohim. On a nevel of 10 strings I play to you. And now bring me a musician. And it came to be, when the musician made music, that the hand of Yahuwah came upon him. Play to Yahuwah with the kinnor in the voice of a song. Play the name, play your name, play his name. Question: how do we play our Creator's name? We have the pronunciation of our Creator's name, Yah or Yahuwah. We understand perhaps how to sing his name, and we have the lyrics to the songs in the Tanakh. But what melody was used to sing the words? And how do we play his name on a musical instrument? Playing his name implies there is a method of mapping the letters of the Hebrew Aleph-bet into musical pitches or notes. In classical music, there is an Italian phrase, soggetto cavato, literally meaning a carved theme or subject. This phrase refers to a compositional device in which the letters of a word are mapped to specific frequencies of a musical alphabet or scale. The thesis of this study is there must be a compositional device which literally enabled the Sons of Yisra'ěl to not only sing our Creator's name, but also to play our Creator's name. 2. Hebrew Gematria. There are 22 letters in the Hebrew Aleph-bet. There are no numbers in Hebrew. The letters themselves double as numbers. The order of the 22 Hebrew letters and their numerical value is firmly established by the acrostic psalms. There are several methods of assigning numerical values to Hebrew words. I will only consider two of these methods, the standard method and the Mispar Gadol method. The standard method. Each letter of the Hebrew Aleph-bet is assigned a numerical value, beginning with 1 for Aleph, 2 for Bet, and so on until Yod, which is 10. Then successive letters are 20, 30, 40, and so on until Kof, which is 100. Then successive letters are 200, 300, 400, until Tav. Note, there are no Sofit, or final form letters. Mispar Gadol method. This method is the same as the standard method above, but counts the Sofit, or final form letters. These Sofit letters are assigned numbers from 500 to 900 respectively. 3. Coincidences in the Bible and in Biblical Hebrew by Haim Shaw. Haim Shaw's book is a wonderful book, each chapter revealing another amazing aspect of the Hebrew language and the Hebrew Bible. Here I focus on chapter 12, where Haim demonstrates the relationship between the frequency and wavelength of light colors and the calculated numerical value of the Hebrew words describing those light colors. Haim Shaw selected the 4 colors presented below and used the standard method of gematria. By adding up the numeric values of the letters in each Hebrew word describing the color, he obtained the calculated numeric value, C and V, of the Hebrew word. Haim Shaw noted the range of wavelengths and frequencies for each color of light and took the mid-range value of each. Finally, Haim plotted the results on 2 graphs: wave frequency of light color versus C and V of the Hebrew word describing that color. Wavelength of light color versus C and V of the Hebrew word describing that color. This is my interpretation of figure 12.2 appearing on page 171 of the book. Wave frequency of light color versus the C and V of the Hebrew word describing that light color. This is my interpretation of figure 12.5 appearing on page 176 of the book. Wavelength of light color versus C and V of the Hebrew word describing that light color. Key points. 1. Both graphs show a linear relationship for the colors yellow, green, and blue, indicating there is a relationship between the calculated numerical value of the Hebrew word and the physical characteristics of the light it describes. 2. As frequency and wavelength are inversely related, it is surprising that both graphs illustrate linear relationships. 3. However, in both cases, red is out of line. As I thought about the above, I realized I could bring red into line with yellow, green, and blue on Haim-Shaw's graphs if I tweaked the x-axis in line with the numbers allocated to the individual Hebrew letters. This is the graph of frequency of light colors versus CNV of the Hebrew word describing that color, with the x-axis scale based upon the numeric value of the Hebrew letters. Note red is now in line with yellow, green, and blue. This is the graph of wavelength of light colors versus CNV of the Hebrew word describing that color, where the x-axis scale is based upon the numeric values of the Hebrew letters. Note red is now in line with yellow, green, and blue. Haim-Shaw demonstrated the relationship between the calculated numerical value of the Hebrew words describing the colors of light and the frequency and wavelength of those colors of light. I realized I could improve the correlation by tweaking the x-axis in line with the numbers allocated to the individual Hebrew letters. If this is the case for light, perhaps it will also work with sound. Perhaps there is a relationship between the numeric value of the individual Hebrew letters and the phonetic sounds they represent. This would provide a means of mapping the letters of the Hebrew Aleph-bet into musical notes, allowing us to play his name. 4. Western music theory is broken. The two videos below explain in detail how Western music theory, that is, Pythagorean tuning, just intonation, mean tone temperament, and equal temperament, are all fundamentally flawed from a mathematical perspective. And I wish to make one further observation. On a stringed instrument, the frequency of sound is inversely proportional to the string length. Therefore, dividing an octave into equal divisions of frequency is not the same as dividing an octave into equal divisions of string length. While on a stringed instrument, the wavelength of sound is directly proportional to string length. Therefore, dividing an octave into equal divisions of wavelength is the same as dividing an octave into equal divisions of string length. Therefore, 1. As dividing an octave into equal divisions of wave frequency is not the same as dividing an octave into equal divisions of string length. Building a music scale on the basis of wave frequencies is fundamentally flawed, and building a music scale on the basis of frequency ratios is doubly flawed. Note, Pythagorean tuning is based on the frequency ratio 1/5, or fifths, and mean tone temperament tuning is based on the frequency ratio 5/4, or a major third. 2. As dividing an octave into equal divisions of wavelength is the same as dividing an octave into equal divisions of string length, we need to be thinking in terms of wavelengths and string lengths. 5. Thinking like a Hebrew. I have great respect for the work of Jeff Benner. One of Jeff's key tenets is, in order to understand the Hebrew scripture, we must understand the culture in which it was written, and specifically appreciate the difference between abstract thought and concrete thought. Greek thought views the world through the mind, that is, abstract thought. Ancient Hebrew thought views the world through the senses, that is, concrete thought. Concrete thought is the expression of concepts and ideas in ways that can be seen, touched, smelt, tasted, and/or heard. Thinking about the frequency of sound and inverse relationships. Comparing a wave frequency measured in hertz, cycles per second, and a string length measured in millimeters is comparing apples with pears. It is abstract thinking. Thinking about a string length which is tensioned by a certain size of rock. Comparing a wavelength measured in millimeters and a string length also measured in millimeters is comparing like with like. It is comparing apples with apples. It is concrete thinking. Thinking like a Hebrew is laying out your reasoning from right to left, just as the Hebrew language is written from right to left. Thinking like a Hebrew is laying out your music score from right to left, just as the Hebrew language is written from right to left. Thinking like a Hebrew is understanding the believing remnant of Yisra'ěl hated the Hellenization of their faith and culture. Consider 1. Antiochus Epiphanes desecrating the House of Yahuwah, the Maccabean revolt, and the subsequent rededication of the House of Yahuwah, which we know as Hanukkah. 2. The siege of Masada. 3. The Bar Kokhba revolt. 4. The so-called Letter of Aristeas, or Epistle of Aristeas, which is used to explain and justify the Greek Septuagint translation. However, there is a third name for this document, Pseudo-Aristeas. Most scholars agree that the battle lines were drawn over whether to use a Greek translation at all. This debate was part of a broader conflict in the final centuries of the first millennium BCE regarding the Hellenization of the Hebrew faith. 6. My thesis. 1. The believing remnant of Yisra'ěl hated the Hellenization of their faith and culture. A Hebrew king, King Dawid, the Sons of Yisra'ěl, and Hebrew worship in the House of Yahuwah did not use a music scale which was developed by the Greeks and the Romans, reads from left to right, is based on wave frequencies and frequency ratios, arbitrarily divides an octave into 12 notes, contains sharps and flats between all notes except E and F, is mathematically flawed, the Pythagorean comma, and as a result contains the devil's tritone. 2. King Dawid was aware of the concept of the octave 700 years before this concept was supposedly discovered by Pythagoras. I contend Western music theory is merely the traditions of men. 3. Haim Shaw demonstrated the relationship between the calculated numeric value of the Hebrew words describing the colors of light and the frequency and wavelengths of those colors of light. If this is the case for light, perhaps it is also the case for sound. Perhaps there is a relationship between the numeric value of the individual Hebrew letters and the phonetic sounds they represent. 4. Think like a Hebrew. Think in concrete terms, not abstract terms. Think of a stringed musical instrument like a monochord, where the wavelength of the sound, measured in millimeters, is directly proportional to the string length, also measured in millimeters, which is comparing apples with apples. Think of a stringed musical instrument where all the strings are of the same material, the same diameter, and are tensioned by the same size rock. The only difference between the strings is string length, and these string lengths are determined according to the numeric value associated with the Hebrew letters. 5. Choose the size of rock tensioning the strings such that the string produces a wavelength of sound which is a whole number multiple of the string length itself. 6. Convert wavelengths to frequencies at the end only for the convenience with electronic tuning devices. 7. Present information as a Hebrew would, i.e. from right to left. 8. The Mispar Gadol method of gematria, Aleph to Tav plus the final form letters. This describes the music scale, but the music scale itself only involves the standard method of gematria, Aleph through to Tav. My reasoning here is the final form letters did not exist in the original Paleo-Hebrew text. The standard form gematria was used by Hamshor throughout his book. The acrostic psalms do not employ the final form letters. 9. This produces a music scale where the octave is divided up into 9 equal divisions of wavelength, or 10 notes per octave. 10. This music scale is not entirely new. It is similar to 9-TET or 9-EDO, but with one slight difference. The octave is divided into 9 equal divisions based upon the wavelength of the sound, not the frequency of the sound. 11. By constructing a musical instrument with the above characteristics, it will be possible to play the Hebrew scripture, and it will be possible to rediscover the correct pronunciation of Hebrew words. 7. My instrument design. I created an Excel spreadsheet which enabled me to calculate Murphy's laws. I trialed many options of string material, diameter, length, and tension. To convert between wavelength of sound and frequency of sound, I used a speed of sound 343 meters per second and an air temperature of 20 degrees Celsius. Consider the Hebrew gematria. 1, 10, 100, 1000 is a geometric progression with a factor of 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 is an arithmetic progression with a factor of 1. 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 is an arithmetic progression with a factor of 10. 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800, 900, 1000 is an arithmetic progression with a factor of 100. I chose a design string length of 1800 millimeters. This design string length is the string on a monochord from which all the other string lengths are derived. Geometric progression defines the octaves. 1/8, 1/4, 1/2, and 1 of the design string length gives us string lengths Aleph 225 millimeters, Yod 450 millimeters, Kaf 900 millimeters, and the design string length at 1800 millimeters. Arithmetic progression defines the divisions within the octave. Within the octaves, the string lengths are divided up into 9 equal divisions, or 10 notes. Table of harmonics. Aleph, Yod, and Kaf harmonic together, as these are 1/8, 1/4, and 1/2 of the design string length. Dalet, Mem, and Tav also harmonic together, as these are 1/6, 1/3, and 2/3 of the design string length. And all the other strings are related to one another by a factor of 72. Key point 1. All strings are of the same material, of the same diameter, and under the same tension. The only difference between the strings is their length, and this length is directly related to the numerical values of the Hebrew letters. Key point 2. Strings may be tensioned by any amount. However, I chose a string tension which results in the wavelength of the sound produced being a whole number multiple of the string length. Perhaps there is some harmonic sweet spot here. Table of string lengths, wavelengths, and frequency for monofilament nylon strings of 1 mm diameter, tensioned by 4.74 kilograms. Wavelength of sound is 3 times string length. This diagram illustrates wavelength of sound against string length for a musical instrument with a design string length of 1800 millimeters. As Hebrew letters read from right to left, so this illustration shows string length increasing from right to left. Along the x-axis are the Hebrew letters, their numeric value, and associated string length. Illustrated are 2 options for string tension, one tensioned by 4.74 kilograms, the other tensioned by 10.74 kilograms. The 4.74 kilograms makes the Aleph string C5 at 432 tuning. The 10.74 kilograms makes the Aleph string G5 at 432 tuning. Note the wavelength of sound is directly proportional to string length. Each octave is divided into 9 equal divisions, giving 10 notes per octave. Safe string length. This diagram indicates where my design sits in relation to accepted string lengths for harp designs. At 4.74 kilograms string tension in the red, my Aleph string is just outside the lower boundary of tension. At 10.74 kilograms string tension in blue, all strings are within accepted boundaries. This diagram is from Music Maker's publication, The Ultimate Harp Buying Guide. The diagram illustrates the strings on a modern lever harp in relation to the keys on a piano. Modern lever harps are diatonic, that is, the strings correspond to the white keys of a piano. Below the diagram, I have illustrated my music scale, Aleph to Tav, plus the final form letters, and the design string. Note, a piano divides the octave into 13 notes, inclusive reckoning, and including sharps and flats. A lever harp divides the octave into 8 notes, inclusive reckoning. My music scale divides the octave into 10 notes, inclusive reckoning. I built this table harp to test my thesis. It covers the full 3 octaves, which includes the final form letters. The design string is 1800 millimeters in length, and the string spacing is 17.5 millimeters. This makes the instrument quite large. Playing the final form letters is interesting, but I do not believe they are part of the Hebrew music scale. They just help to describe it. These photos illustrate how the design string may be tensioned with a known weight. Then using a sliding fret, the design string is used as a monochord to tune all the other strings on the instrument. In practice, to tune the harp, I use a musical instrument tuning app, which has a readout in hertz, such as N-Track Tuner and Fine Tuner. I also built this table harp. It only covers the 22 strings Aleph through to Tav, so the longest string is Tav at 1200 millimeters. I also reduced the string spacing to 15 millimeters. This makes the instrument a manageable size. I also built this lap harp, which is the same design concept but in a traditional harp configuration. Again, it covers the 22 strings Aleph through to Tav, so the longest string is Tav at 1200 millimeters, with string spacing of 15 millimeters. This harp is a double-strung harp with 22 strings on each side. With my most recent harp, I put the strings inside a sound box. This amplifies and reverberates the sound in a very pleasing way and gives me the option of playing the instrument as a table harp or as a lap harp. The design process. Pause the video to read. Construction notes. Pause the video to read. Construction notes. Pause the video to read. 8. King Dawid's 10 strings. There are two types of stringed musical instrument described in the Tanakh, the kinnor and the nevel. Praise to Yahuwah with the kinnor, with the nevel of 10 strings, play to him. On 10 strings and on the nevel, to the sounding chords of the kinnor, I will sing a new song to you, Elohim. On a nevel of 10 strings I play to you. Question. Why is King Dawid adamant his musical instrument has 10 strings? I have presented here a music scale which is based upon the numeric values of the Hebrew letters. There are 22 letters in the Hebrew Aleph-bet. How did King Dawid play 22 notes on a 10-string musical instrument? Michael Levy and Dennis McCorkle have written on the subject of the kinnor and the nevel. We may speculate on these instruments, but the fact is we do not know what these instruments looked like. However, there are at least 5 ways King Dawid may have played 22 notes on a 10-string musical instrument. 1. If we arrange the Hebrew letters and their numeric values as below, you can see they form 3 octaves. If King Dawid played his 10 strings Aleph through to Yod, then repeated the same strings for Yod through to Kaf, then repeated again for Kaf to Tav and perhaps the final form letters. 2. He played harmonics, which is an advanced technique but allows the playing of 2 or more notes on one string. 3. The instrument had a bridge around 4/5 of the string length, and the string was played both above the bridge and also below the bridge, giving 2 notes on one string. 4. The 3 or 4 columns illustrated on the Bar Kokhba coins were a primitive form of fretboard, similar to a guitar, violin, etc. Or 5. Some combination of the above, as on the Karuth, where the bass strings are separated from the higher strings. 9. My music score. This is currently a work in progress. However, consider Tehillim 118 verses 25 and 26. 1. Take the Hebrew text. 2. Break the Hebrew words into their syllables. 3. Transliterate the words. 4. Present information. My music score reads from right to left as per the Hebrew language. I play the notes in each syllable as a chord and regard each Hebrew word as a bar of music. I have found I tend to play the first octave, Aleph to Yod, with my right hand and the remaining notes with my left hand. The first octave contains all of the vowel letters, so most of the playing is in this octave. Hence it makes sense to hold the instrument with the Aleph string, highest note, closest to the player. 10. Conclusion. In one of his videos, Jeff Benner made the statement, "We will not know the correct pronunciation of our Creator's name until the archaeologists find Moshe's tape recorder." This statement stuck with me. With the information laid out in the previous 2 studies, I wonder if we have found Moshe's tape recorder. I am a professional mariner. I am not a musician. I am not a native Hebrew speaker, and I am certainly not a singer. But King Dawid teaches us to play our Creator's name, and this is my attempt at doing so. Have I discovered the ancient Hebrew music scale, or have I simply invented the Arbitrarily 2025 music scale? I do not know, but I can demonstrate a mathematical link between this music scale and the Hebrew scripture. I can play his name. This is still a work in progress. Hoshiana asay leman shimka Yahuwah. Hoshiana leman Yisra'ěl imeka. Hoshiana leman Yerushalayim erika. Hoshiana, Hoshiana. List of references.